Experiences that I've been in, and I've thought, wow, this is like that Aesop's Fable story. So this guy's like the evil fox, And it's amazing how humanity has been told in stories where the animals can speak. And so it's a lot easier to remember those things. And I read a book by a bloke called Idris Shah. He's written quite a few of them. One of them's called The Wisdom of the Idiots, which is quite funny in the wisdom that's in it. And it's an Islam-based or an Islamic or Arabic-based book. And the stories are all around the Sufis and the wise men and things like that. And so a Sufi is like a wise man in Arabic tradition. And the king is being carried along, or the pharaoh is being carried along in the old days. And this wise old Sufi on the side of the road says to the king, hey, stop the cart for 100 denarii. I'll give you a piece of advice that'll save your life. The king was a little bit bored on this long journey, so he said, okay, put me down. And he said, what's the advice? And the Sufi said, in everything you do, begin with the end in mind. The king threw in the purse of denarii, and everyone thought, what a rip-off, that was pretty dumb. And they carried him back. And the king had inscribed over all the royal stationery, in everything you do, begin with the end in mind. And the walls in the palace, in everything you do, begin with the end in mind. Everything, he had this inscribed. Anyway, years later, the royal physician's been called to do the bloodletting, which is what they did back in those days. And some of the advisors to the king had bribed this physician. They said, we'll give you 20,000 denarii and your own sort of castle somewhere down the road if you lace the scalpel with poison. It'll kill the king. And this guy's going, wow, instant money. This is great. Okay. So as he sits down and the king's there, and they put in front of the king the royal lancet and the royal little bowl, and inscribed on it is, in everything you do, begin with the end in mind. And the bloke thinks, hang on a second. If I killed the king, these guys are going to get me for 20,000. If we can get rid of the king, they're not going to give you that money. And the king sees him trembling and says, what's happened? And he told the king the story, and the king said, right, obviously had those blokes done away with, but it saved the doctor's life and it saved the king's life. And the reason I say that is there's so many things that we get into. We talked about happiness and unhappiness. The difference between happiness and unhappiness is choice. And there are so many things that we just don't choose to do with the end in mind. And I put a little bit of thought. I didn't get to sleep till 2 o'clock last night because I was thinking about this weekend and the personal responsibility we have to each other. And whilst what I do is I do this for corporates, when I flicked the switch and thought, hang on, these blokes are dads. And this is a real dad movement. And what I can teach you in that respect is just, the idea that I was able to change the message for how to handle stress in the workplace without alcohol or drugs to how to handle COVID, then a lot of what I can teach can also be changed or pivoted to say, well, okay, how does it apply to dads? And a lot of the things that I did for my children is why I have such a great relationship with them now. And when I hear dads go, my 16-year-old son, he doesn't talk to me and all that sort of business, I think you failed him when he was 5. Between the ages of 0 and 7, the Jesuits say, you give me the child and I'll give you the man. Between the ages of 0 to 7, we've pretty much formed who we are as people. And I guess when you talk to yourselves, there'll be times when you remember as a young boy speaking to yourself with exactly the same voice. Does that apply to you blokes? Yeah. And so that would have been around about between the ages of 6 and 7 that you started to think and talk. And Plato says thinking is the soul talking with itself, which is why I encourage people to journal, because it's getting your thoughts out on paper. When you were taught how to write, you were taught how to think on paper. My kids said to me once, oh yeah, but we were brought up with laptops and digital and iPads. And I said, yeah, hang on, but they put a pencil in your hand and a bit of paper in front of you and you wrote, Digger sat on the mat, or Pam chased Sam, or whatever it was. And then you had to do comprehension and you read and you had to write about that. So we think on paper. And I think that's important. I walked into my then 16-year-old daughter's room one morning and I said, Madeline, I said, what have I always told you? And she said, in everything you do, begin with the end in mind. And I thought, yes, that's great. And if you had, you wouldn't have left your bra on the ground because your mother hits the roof. And that was what, for mine, I thought, well, she remembered that lesson. And I was talking about encouragement last night. There are so many lessons that we can give our children that takes 1 minute, even while you're planting the tomatoes or you're picking these things, the little life lessons. And you may yourselves remember these little life lessons that your fathers taught you. But there's a lot of fun you can have with this stuff as well. My kids, I would sing them things. And so it'd be like, the best day ever, which years later they go, hey, because it's my best friend's girlfriend. They go, that's actually a song, yeah. And as I take them out of the bath, I'd go, shake, 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 diddly-doodle, shake, 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 shake your Annabelles, woo, shake your Madeleines, woo, whichever one it was. And then they go, hey, that's a song, all these years later. And so I'm having fun. I'm engaging with the kids. Tell me any of you who can be in a bad mood while you're singing or whistling. You can't. So you're presenting a good mood to the kids. It gets your head out of the office. Then when they're in bed, you can go back to being the stinking thinking clown or whatever you think is serving you, but it's not. But it all starts the second you wake up in the morning. The first hour is the rudder for the day. If you get it right, you own the morning, you own the day. So what I'll talk to you about are a couple of things that, there are a lot of things that I do that I wouldn't expect you to do because they've become so routine for me that they're almost superstitious. Like I jump on the scales, I get out of bed and I make the bed. So that's the first thing. Now, there's a speech you may or may not have seen of and that's great, but just make your bloody bed because you're not a bum. Just make your bed. And for me, the idea of that is you've won your first goal, you've achieved the first thing. But you've also shown a bit of care and a bit of self-respect and respect to your partner in that regard. There are so many little things and little words. I work in words a lot. And when I say to people, I have no intimacy with my wife. And I said, but if you think about it and break down the word intimacy, your wife needs, it's like, are you into me, see? And when you show your wife you're into her, she'll be a lot more into you. Dr. Phil said years ago, stacking the dishwasher is foreplay. I've got a client knows. It really is, taking out the trash. I used to say to my ex, inevitably, I'll get around to it. And yet I think, and if anyone who's remarried or recoupled, your new partner gets all the better versions of you that your old partner didn't get, that if you actually did do, you probably would still be with your old partner. But in a lot of cases, it's like, take out the damn trash. Don't have to be asked. Yes, do it now.
And it's done. You don't even have to think about it after that.
That's right. Now, curiously, there was something you said, is it Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said something earlier on about the breathing exercise, and you said, I've been meaning to do that with my son.
Yeah.
How long have you been meaning to do that for? How long?
I've been 6 months maybe.
Boom. Yeah. What did I say to Alex this morning? I said, I'm going to ask you that, and I bet you your answer is 6 months.
Yeah.
Because we make a decision to do something, and then it's not till 6 months later that we do it. But if you do it now, it starts now. Yeah. Like my nephew hugging his dad. Yeah. For 5 or 6 months now, they've been hugging daily. Or whenever they see each other. That's a good thing. But time gets away from you. When I was a kid, there used to be a lot of ads on television for Christian's Television Workshop. And you'd see the dad be, hey dad, when are we going to do that? Oh, I've got too much time. I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And then you'd see the dad come home from a business trip and the kid's running through the house and he goes, oh, hi dad, keeps going. Because the dad is so absent that he's just been absent. The child doesn't even recognize him as a figure in his life. The time we have with these human beings is so limited in as far as what we can do for them and for ourselves. I said to somebody earlier, there's a lot of things that happen to us in life, but they happen for us in life as well. When you look at what has happened to a lot of you men, it's who you've become because of those things. They shape us. And the happenings and the happenstance is what actually makes you who you are and gives you happiness. If you use them to your advantage. There's a story Tony Robbins tells of two twin sons, and their father was an alcoholic. And one of them was the CEO of a company, and one of them ended up in jail. And they asked the CEO, how did you become the CEO of a top 500 Fortune 500 company? He goes, well, with a dad like mine, what choice did I have? And they asked the criminal, how did you end up like you did? He goes, well, with a dad like what choice did I have? The point of it is, it's between stimulus and response is your decision or your ability to choose. And that's the moment and the space. Now, you can walk away from here and do absolutely nothing. There's another word I use. The Wedding Crashers is another funny movie that I like watching. And when I might have mentioned that the kid shouts out, Ma, meatloaf, or Ma, water, and you don't make your child say please or thank you, you're actually just raising a kid who has no manners. Thanks and please are two little keys that open every door. I've worked at, I would actually do the barbecues at my daughter's school, and a kid would come up and go, sausage. And I'd say, where will I get that from? The land of please? And the kid would go, what? What? It's like, say please. You know, but there's a word that I say.
Takes them a while sometimes too to work it out.
Oh, some of them never get it. You think, oh, sausage, get out. Because now you're making me cranky. In The Wedding Crashers, when Owen Milson meets Will Ferrell at the end, and Will Ferrell's got the nunchucks and he's in his nightgown and he's shouting out meatloaf to his ma, and he's moved on from weddings and he's actually moved into funerals. But Owen Milson says, because they're easy picking, because there's emotion involved. I reckon one of the easiest places in the world to get a laugh is at a funeral, because grief and laughter are two very similar emotions. You can't control them. When you suppress grief and then somebody says a joke during a eulogy, you bring the whole church down, because people just wanted to release. So
That's
happiness.
why that's why we go to funerals, easy laugh.
They're the easiest crowd, and as Will Ferrell says, they're the easiest place to pick up because there's so much emotion involved. But one of the other things when Owen Wilson sees, he goes, "How you going?" He says, "I'm living the dream." And we all talk about living the dream, but what is the dream? Bill Gates said, "Vision without action is daydreaming." I've got a mate in Melbourne, and every time I'd meet him, he'd show me his vision board, and he had, do this and do that. And every time I'd see him, this thing was so busy. And I said, "Hey man, can I borrow your pen?" It was a whiteboard. He said, "Oh, no. I said, "Okay, just let me do one thing." Because up the top it said vision board. And I rubbed out vision and just wrote action. Now this bloke runs 3 companies. He's got a school that teaches English in Germany. He has a publishing company in Dublin. Everything on the board he did because he actually took action. Everything's hard at the start. They say, take the first step. Now, my dream analogy or acronym around setting goals is, the D is, what is it that you absolutely most desire? Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says it just can't be a wish or a hope. It's got to be an absolute desire. So until you really, really desire something, it's just a wish. It's not an intention and you won't go after it. So when you write your goals in the mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial and family sense, write them in what you desire them to be. Intentions is something you intend to do. Benjamin Franklin said, resolve to perform what you ought and perform without fail what you resolve. So a resolution, a New Year's resolution is not a wish or a hope. It's something you resolve to do. If you're not going to do what you say on your goals, and your goals should be a to-do list, there shouldn't be a wish list, don't write them down. And if once you've said, okay, what is it that you really desire? Let's just say, I want to have a better relationship with my wife. Okay, now the next R is realistic. Is it realistic? Okay, it is realistic. But the next one is end time. So what's the deadline? In what period of time do you want to have a fantastic relationship with your wife? Soon. Is that what's soon? Is that tomorrow? Soon could be 6 months for some people.
Yeah.
But realistically, when would you like to have a great relationship with your wife?
Or great her.
By when do you think it is? The A is achievable. So the end time is by March.
March. Yeah.
Okay, is that achievable?
Yes.
Okay. Now the M, everyone's done SMART goal settings. SMART goal settings are specific. So specifically, what do you desire? M is it measurable? Yeah, it is. I want to run 5Ks in 20 minutes. The A is that achievable? If I train every single day like enough, absolutely. The R is it realistic? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic? Yes, it is. And then the T is to a time. And the time might be by March. Mm-hmm. The one thing missing from that goal setting acronym is what Nike invested over $300 million in. Just do it. But the M is make it happen. You guys can go away from here. Alex could have given you big folders. I mean, how many of you have got books that you put back on your shelf after you've come away from one of these rah-rah times, and they sit there as a reminder of another bunch of broken promises? Whereas if you take the first step, the hardest part is the start. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. The hardest part about getting a rocket or a spaceship to the moon is in takeoff. Everything is hard at the start. The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. Successful people don't want to do it either. They just do it. I reckon 99% of the population just don't get it. You are one of the 1% of the population that now get it. But of the 1% of the population that get it, 99% of them don't do it. So what are you going to do differently as opposed to any other thing? Like buy the books. Instead of buying another book, finish the books you bought. How many people have books they bought on Amazon that are, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and they haven't read them? Can anyone put their hand up to that? Yeah, and I find the more people kind of come to me, and I was invited to a woman's place for Christmas one day, and she have a look at my bookshelf. Now I knew the woman, so I knew what she was like, and she had this bookshelf that was full of all these self-help books, and I said, "May I, Alicia?" You don't know Alicia, so I'm not breaching confidentiality. She says, "Yeah," and I picked up one, and I looked at her, and I went, and the book stopped, and I put it over there. I pulled out the bookmark. May I, Alicia? I pulled 5 books without even looking, and as I flicked them, there was a bookmark in every single one of them where she stopped reading that book. And how many of you have books on your bookshelf where you stop reading? Now, for me, I read with photos. So if I'm looking for a photo and I think, where's that photo? Oh, I didn't finish the book. And so I'm looking through and there'll be photos of my kids and I think, I never finished that book. So I'll actually finish a book that I bought because there's my 5-year-old daughter and she's now 23. So rather than buy another book, which is somebody else's interpretations of the laws of human nature, or most success literature is based on spiritual texts that are thousands of years old. There's nothing new under the sun. Things that Benjamin Franklin said, somebody else has just put it somewhere else. The 5 a.m. club is early to rise, early to bed. The early bird gets the worm. Early to rise, early to bed makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I probably said it the wrong way. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's the 5 a.m. Club book by Robin Sharma. So all of these books, there's a book in each of us, and it would be based on the collective knowledge that we have and the translations of those into our own words. So I encourage you all to start writing a book for you, or even write it for your children, so that you put into action what you're actually thinking and going on from there. I talked about destiny as well. So your dream is to your destiny. And if you start with making it happen, then what was the first word of the first phrase of destiny?
Do it now.
Do it now. So my thing, I'll get into what I'm really supposed to be up here talking about. But it was just something I thought about last night that I left out of last night's conversation. So the first thing I do is I make my bed, and then I bloot. I go to the bathroom, of course, and then I come back and I jump on the scales. Now, I wouldn't encourage everybody to get on the scales every day because it can be disheartening. You can have fluid water weight if you had a salty dinner, but once a week at least weigh yourself. But I get on every single day because one, it's an immediate connection to who I am and the weight of the world or the weight of me, and I go, right, I have a first connection, then that sets the day in motion. I'll then have the juice of 1 whole lemon in 750 mils of ice water. The reason why I say ice water, thermogenesis, your body has to actually convert that water to 37 degrees, which is your body temperature. So you're getting free fat burning. So then Brock, we were talking about glyphosites and things like that. Australia has the lowest selenium and iodine levels in the world. Whether it's farming, whether it's that blow-off or whatever it is, I don't know. But Ken, I noticed in your car, you've got Brazil nuts. 2 Brazil nuts gives you your daily selenium intake. Selenium is one of those things that stops your organs breaking down later on into life. So 2 is great. Too much can give you selenium toxicity, which is a bad thing. Himalayan rock salt is what I have. So salt, you haven't hydrated for 8 hours. In winter, you can see yourself, when it's less than 10 degrees and you're talking, you can see steam coming out of your mouth. That's happening now, but because of the temperature, you can't see it. I'm losing oxygen, I'm losing water, H2O, as I'm speaking to you and as I'm moving through sweat or whatever. You've slept and breathed for 8 hours, ideally, and you have to hydrate. So the first thing you do, the liver is being flushed, your digestive system is put into, you don't even have to eat, but the lemon juice resets your digestion, it flushes out your lymph nodes, cleans your organs, and starts your metabolism going. The Himalayan rock salt has 84 minerals in it, so it's better than salt. It doesn't leach your system, it actually contributes. Iodized Himalayan rock salt is even better because it gives you iodine. The thyroid problems that we have are created by iodine, either too much or too little in your system. So that's the first thing I do. I go straight to there and I turn on the coffee machine while I'm doing this, and then I have a double shot of coffee. Coffee is rich in antioxidants. It starts the mind going. It's just great, but it's good for your alertness. It starts your muscular system working, your circulation system working as well. I then sit down to journal. Now, as I journal, to me, journaling, if you've never journaled, it's just getting the monkey chatter out of your mind. I might write, I date the page, I write the time, and I'll say Monday the 31st of January, 5 a.m. or whatever time I sit down to journal. I then have a little note off the side, because the next thing I do is a to-do list. And so whilst I'm journaling, I might say, 31st of January, it's my brother Terry's birthday. I'll have to give him a call later. Call Terry. And then blah, 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 blah. I dreamt about so-and-so doing this, that, and the other. I wonder what that's telling me. Maybe I need to put more deposits in that emotional bank account. Put some deposits in the emotional bank account of the tool. And so the to-do list, as I say, is written from my journaling. And if it is something like, a friend's birthday that I remember, then I say, happy birthday, Barry. Yeah, hey man, you sent me that's great, you're the first person. Took me less than a minute. So you're journaling. Now the journaling for me, I used to do it 2 at a time. Now I just journal for 2 A4 pages. Again, depending on the time of day, I can sit in the backyard, I can hear the birds singing, I feel there's the aliveness that you have. I will say some form of prayer, as far as walking outside and looking at the stars. And, I think what they say this morning, I opened 2 presents, my eyes. And it's things like that once you actually are grateful, the minute you start that prayer. I write prayers as well. I write prayers of gratitude, prayers of look after my niece who's been rushed to hospital or whatever. Those sort of things. As I say, you can pray to whoever you like. It could be to, what's Madonna's religion? Kabbalah. I think it's another form of whatever. But there's new religions every day, and that religion or belief system has to serve, support, nurture, and sustain you. I meditate. So meditation, again, it doesn't have to be the woo-woo business, but it's actually just... Did you all notice when Ken took you through the breathing exercise this morning, the very last one when you opened your eyes afterwards, how did the world look? It looked different, didn't it? I was talking to Gio the other day, and he said when he was standing in the creek and Matt was talking to us, and then when he opened his eyes, he said he could just see all these colours and all that sort of thing. Our eyes use up an enormous amount of energy. They're one of the most energy draining organs that we have in our body. And just when I talk about meditation, meditation is just almost time out. It's clearing the slate. It's actually just turning off the TV of our mind. And to sit there and just focus on your breathing. And again, most religions around the world will have breath work as part of your connection to the universe and yourself. It's an involuntary action that you can actually control. If you're not thinking about your breathing, you'll still breathe anyway. But it's an involuntary action that you can control, and when you do, you're taking control of yourself. So meditation for me is focusing on absolutely nothing. Now the idea of it is, does anyone drive to work over a bridge that then gets very, very congested? I cross the Spit Bridge every now and again, and in Sydney on the northern beaches, the government's been promising us extra laneways. Our brains talk to each other, to ourselves, through neural pathways that have been set in stone. When Ken's dad would tell him to get the left-handed screwdriver, he's being quite funny, but if you're right-handed and you start brushing your teeth with your left hand, your brain has to build new neural pathways to actually deal with that. So driving a different way to work. I do boxing training with a lot of my clients, and the first time anyone has ever learnt a boxing technique, it's really weird. And I always say to them, what you are doing, you are consciously incompetent. Once you get this, you'll be consciously competent, and eventually you'll be like Neo in the Matrix, and you'll be unconsciously competent. So if I'm saying to somebody, okay, hit the mitts, left, left, right, uppercut, uppercut, high, high, hook, hook, straight, straight, knee, knee, kick, kick, when they just can't do it. But the moment they actually start doing it, they're actually learning things that they haven't done. They're building new neural pathways in their brain. They're putting more laneways on. So when you get to the bridge and you flow through, you can handle it. When I say stress is determined by the degree to which you feel in control or out of control of your life, the more neural pathways you have in your brain, when the shit hits the fan, it just goes, out because it doesn't sit in because you're so calm, because you have so many neural pathways in your brain. People say to me, how did that not bother you? And I go, what? So, hey, now I'm saying all this coming off the back of being one of the angriest men you'll have ever met in your life. My knuckles are scarred from the fights that I've had. I was one of 6 boys. We were the only kind of Catholics in town, so we got picked on by everybody. So we fought, and it was like the brothers, but that doesn't happen. When you get in the real world, my father said there's going to be guns and knives, and the more you doubt why someone is picking on you, the more they are weaponed up. So it's like a bully. A bully will never pick on somebody who's bigger than them. And so in teaching our sons these sort of techniques, you teach them how to fight so they don't have to fight. You look at people and you go, wow, this guy's a 5th Dan martial artist. You wouldn't know. He could tear the room apart, but he won't because he's at peace. He knows what he's got. The biggest chest beaters I've ever met in my life are the most insecure people you'll ever meet. I've said to somebody once, they say that the difference between arrogance and confidence is, arrogance is like the person who hasn't done their homework and cheats in an exam. Confident people sit down and they go, wow, I'm prepared. We sweat in battle to avoid bleeding. We sweat in training to avoid bleeding in battle. The idea that the shit hits the fan, you don't have to pick up a weapon, here they are, you can look after yourself. But the thing is, I've given up 100 bar stools in my life and say, hey man, I've been sitting on the stool for half an hour, but you can have it. Because I'm not going to have a fight over a stupid bar stool, which when I was 18, 19, I would have done. So the idea of being prepared and meditating and being calm is so that you can deal with all this stuff. And when your ability to deal with things means it just doesn't happen. Now, the funny thing I was talking about, I often say that, I used to say arrogant people are rude to cab drivers and waitresses, because the cab driver, he's going to lose his job if you complain to the cab company. The waiter or waitress might lose her job if you complain about whatever. And the day I'd said this, and one of my ex-wife's friends who I didn't like, we had to go to lunch with them, and the cab hadn't turned up, so he makes an obnoxious phone call to the cab company, and the cab turns up, and as he gets in the car, as he's getting out, he goes, oh, yes, there's chewing gum on the, and the cab driver said, oh, I'm really, really sorry. No, I'm really sorry. And he goes, oh, well, clean your cab. And he said, well, I didn't get a chance. I was the emergency cab to actually take you to because you're the other one who cancelled. And I'm looking at his wife, and she didn't do anything, and I slipped the guy $20 and said, I'm really, really sorry about this, because I felt so bad for him because he was shattered. And I'm thinking, as I'm walking, I'm thinking, wow, what a bully. And when we get in the restaurant, this guy's pontificating and carrying on, and the waitress came along with a little plate, and there's olive oil and balsamic vinegar and bread, and she's going to put it down, and he's like, oh, I ain't talking about himself, and he knocks the bowl out of his hand. He goes, what are you sneaking up on me like that for? And I thought, wow, rude to cab drivers, mean to waitresses. The most insecure, arrogant man I've ever met in my life. And you just think, wow, I don't want to be like that, and I wouldn't want my child to be like that. How do I instill confidence in my child so they don't become arrogant? How do I make my child so confident in themselves so they don't have to be a bully? And kids can bully their parents because they're not equipped. So all of this stuff that you're learning, it does start with self, but you've all been on a plane when they say when the oxygen mask drops down from the roof. First time I recalled this, and I'd travelled many times before, my children were on either side of me. They said, fix yourself before you fix your kids. I thought, of course I'd fix my kids. Then I realised, hang on, I'm no good to anybody until I'm good to them. You cannot pour from an empty cup. When we talked about fuel as food, I have my dad used to say to me, oh, look at him, there he is, looking after number one. And I took it as a bad thing. Now, as I get older, I've got to look after number one. I'm no good to anyone until I'm good for myself. My post-workout smoothie is called my looking after number one shake, which I'll send you all the recipe for if you want it. The next on the list, once I've done my to-do and meditated, I read for 30 minutes. So whether that is something that is intelligent, spiritual, in the field that I work in. So if you're in finance, read something from the finance industry. If you're in homewares, download something from a Turkish site about, ostrich feathers. That sort of thing will keep you at the head of your game. In Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio. Anyone seen that movie? Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio? And he got through as a university lecturer in psychology. And when the FBI caught him, they go, how did you get away with that? And he said, I was just always one chapter ahead of the class.
Yeah.
If you're 10% more intelligent than the next person, then you're 10% ahead of the class. If you can educate yourself every day to be smarter than who you were yesterday, and I think that's your job. Ernest Hemingway said, your competition's not about being better than your fellow man, it's about being better than the man you were yesterday. And so if you can say to yourself, hey, in your journaling, well, yesterday I did this and da-da-da-da, and that's great. And when I was talking to you last night about your getting to sleep thing, do, be and have, what did you do today that made you a better man than who you were yesterday? And if you can't think of something, do that. I was about 8 years old when my dad said to me, I asked him, when do you die? And he said, you die the day you stop learning. And that was great. A few weeks later, I was in bed and I thought, I just bludged and mucked around at school. I didn't learn a thing. And so I thought I was going to die. So I ran in and I grabbed the Encyclopedia Britannica and I read up on the Kalahari Bushmen. And I thought, right, okay, and I fell asleep. And then a few weeks later, we had to come up with something that nobody knew about. And I started sprouting about the Kalahari Bushmen and put it into some sort of a thing that I got top marks for. So I've always found that learning something every single day, I then have more to offer the next person. I'm updating my knowledge because there are things that you may know that change. Mark Twain said, it's not what you know that'll get you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And sometimes we learn things, and you know yourself, the stuff that we know about exercise changes. It's always changing, which is a good lead into the next thing, which is exercise. The minimum exercise dosage, or MED, that they talk about is 180 seconds. If you can exercise or do something for 180 seconds, you're stimulating your entire circulatory and the 12 function systems that you have in your body. So what I do that you probably don't have to do, but in between all this, I do 50 air squats and 50 push-ups, and that's that. Now, if I do nothing else that day, I've fired myself up, I've turned on all my neurons. It's probably before I journal, and it gives me some clever things to write about. But for at least 20 to 30 minutes, you need to move. Now, I didn't mention it last night, but it is one of the 8 E's of equilibrium, which is balance. And that is, you can do low intensity, steady state cardio, high intensity interval training. 20 minutes with a kettlebell, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. For 20 minutes, you'll burn 450 calories. 10 minutes of skipping is the same as 30 minutes of running. So if you can skip for 10 minutes, great, well done. But even if you just skip for a minute and stop, skip, as long as collectively it's 10 minutes, that's a 30-minute run. So I talk about life hacks and cutting corners. It's not about cheating or cutting across fields or whatever we did on the walk back down. You know, as they say, break the rules. Arnold Schwarzenegger's 6 Laws of Success, which I reckon you should all download and listen to if you haven't. He says, break the rules, don't break the law. There's nothing illegal about what we did yesterday, but it was breaking the rules, and it's what the forefathers and pioneers probably did anyway. What's next on the list? Oh, stretch. So you've learned a lot about mobility on this trip as well, but the stretches, I do very similar stretches to what Ken does, but I also hold a stretch where right now ankles, once they go, are very, very difficult. Yesterday I kind of popped an ankle the second I walked into the place, but it didn't actually damage my ankle, I didn't sprain it. But if you actually do this for 1 minute, and so what is happening now is my ankle and my calf muscles are all having to tighten while I'm stretching my quadricep here, and it's a good stretch, and you can hold it in and all that sort of thing. Do it with the other leg as well, and you keep that doing for a minute, so it gives you a balanced side. One side of your body is always stronger than the other. I've got to do an extra 2 curls with a bicep for my right because it doesn't get as big as my left. I've got to do that because my right chest doesn't, my right side is weaker than my left side. But do stretching. Now stretching, a good exercise routine should have strength, cardio, flexibility, and balance. Because as we go on through life, the things that deteriorate are strength. We talk about protein and protein being first importance. One thing a lot of people don't recognise is if you don't have enough protein in your diet, the only place that your body can get, and you're still training, and tell your partners this because women don't get it either, they think protein's going to turn them into this. The only place your body can get it from is from your skeleton. So your skeleton will release amino acids, which is what protein is broken down into, the building blocks of life, and so you lose bone density. And osteoporosis is what makes people, they break their hips. the things that get adults, proprioception, I think Ken talked about. If I was doing this right now and I close my eyes, I can't because your eyes and you've got eustachius fluid in your middle ear, and it's like a spirit level. And proprioception, if you want to focus on something, you focus on a point and you look at the point, and that gauges how your spirit level or your eustachius fluid, which controls your balance. If you ever get a middle ear infection, you start getting vertigo and things like that. Drinking alcohol affects the eustachius fluid in your brain as well, and the fluids in your body. So as you get older, you need to maintain your balance, you need to maintain your strength, because when you fall over and you break your rib, you get a cold and you get pneumonia and you die. How many people have lost grandparents through pneumonia because Nan didn't make it, or she caught septicemia or something in hospital? I hate hospitals. They're the worst place in the world. If you're going to get sick, that's where it's going to be. People who died, a lot of the people who died through COVID had what they call comorbidity. They had pre-existing conditions. That was why they died from that. The other thing is breaking your hip. I say to young blokes, if you pop an Achilles, then you can't do anything. No matter how good your fitness campaign's going, you can't even walk once you've done an Achilles. So the idea, once you're older, if you break a hip, you're immobile and life rewards action. I say this is a kinetic watch. If I take it off, for more than 3 days it stops. I could wear this every day and I don't have to do anything about it. So life really does reward action. And the fact that we've been in these streams and there's so much movement and life around us here is why we feel so alive. Next on the list is breath work. So I will do, after my training and my stretching, I then finish off with breath work. Now for my breathing is different. As we breathe, our nasal breathing is favoured one or the other. So 75% of the time, oxygen's going through my right nostril, which oxygenates the left side of your body, and with my left nostril, 25%, or vice versa. When you sleep throughout the course of the night, if you sleep on your right side, you will naturally have more, the sinuses go to the right, so you'll have a bit of a blockage there. So my breathing, which also involves the chakra there, and again, this could all be placebo, but I believe it. As I'm putting my finger on my third eye, I think about how smart I am and how the universe is sending me such intellect to do what I do, and I breathe in through my left nostril for the count of 6, and I hold it for the count of 6, and I breathe out through my right nostril for the count of 6. Now I do that 6 times, and then I switch. So I'm oxygenating my right brain, which is my creative side, and my left brain, which is my analytical side. So before I get up and do any of this stuff, I'm doing this because, one, it calms me down. Everything we're talking about calms the parasympathetic system, our nervous system. I will train people and you go, hey, do you suffer from anxiety? And they go, yeah. It's like, because you don't breathe. The Matrix, which is one of my favourite movies of all time, and when I talk about my 1 hour of entertainment or dipping out, if you go onto Netflix at my place, it'll say continue watching for David, and it's The Matrix. And I'll always get something else out of it. But has everyone here seen The Matrix? Yeah. And when Neo's kind of like coming to terms with the fact he's been unplugged, and they go, breathe, because he's not. And you'll find that breath work is one of those things that just calms you all down. It's a really nice finisher to everything I'm doing of a morning. The next thing I do, so once I've done my journaling and I write my to-do list, I then identify which one is my frog. Have you guys ever heard the idea of eating a live frog? So if the worst thing you have to do every day is eat a live frog, then you do the worst first. So I look at my list and I go, right, what's the one thing that's going to stare me in the face like a live frog all day long until I eat it? Once you eat that live frog, it's out of your way. So you do the worst first. And generally, the worst is probably going to be the most beneficial to us. And we procrastinate on the things that are going to serve us best. So getting that out of the way is such a... Again, stress being determined by the degree to which we feel in control or out of control of our lives. Control your life by getting rid of the stress. I think I said it last night about Bruce Lee. If you love life, you'll love time, because time is what life is made up of. And we waste time worrying about things that are in our control, like doing it. You know what I mean? Just get the thing done. So then the next thing on my list, which is a cold shower. And which we all know what that does. Cold showers increase your lymphocytes, the white blood cells in your body. Your white blood cells get reproduced every 3 days. Your body will produce 1 billion white blood cells. What white blood cells are? Your immunity system. 90% of your immunity is produced in your gut, so having a healthy gut biome is fantastic. 70% of your immunity, 90% of your serotonin, which is your feel-good hormone, is produced in your gut. So eating those things like bone broth, probiotics, prebiotics, kefir, sauerkraut, kombucha, these sort of things are really, really good for your gut, which helps your body digest. When they talk about leaky gut syndrome, you can eat the most high-quality grass-fed beef you can get your hands on or pay for. It'll go straight through you if you don't have a healthy gut system. And most people who just feel like shit's because they're eating shit. You eat well, you know, we are what we eat. So the idea of doing the cold shower, and has everyone seen The Wolf of Wall Street? So in The Wolf of Wall Street, he sits there and he does, and it's quite funny. And I do that with kids, but your thymus is what they call that, the thymus thumping. The thymus is at its highest point, which is what controls our immunity, our feel good. It's one of if a hormone is out of whack in your body, your thymus sends in more hormones to keep the homeostasis of the body balanced. So doing this is actually a really, really powerful thing because it stimulates the thymus. You can't not be happy. It just floods you full of endorphins. And kids, if they start that habit, you could have a kid who might be grumpy or cranky or pessimistic and sad. Get them to do that with you. One, it's like planting tomatoes. You're spending quality time with them. But doing that and getting them to do that with you, and they laugh. Now, my girlfriend's got a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter, and the 7-year-old is Pollyanna and he's Eeyore. And she'll do this all day long, and he'll refuse to. And when we changed his diet, because I said, it doesn't matter what you give him chicken nuggets. He doesn't like poached. I had a bloke once say, he won't eat anything except rice, white rice with chicken salt. He's 3 years old. How does a 3-year-old know about chicken salt? So our children know about what foods they eat because we give them. How do they know about, zoodles, or not zoodles? Zoodles are good for you, I think. They're noodles, zucchini noodles. But the stuff that we give our kids to shut them up is actually making them more wired. So I got the go-ahead to do the protein every day for 2 weeks, and it worked. And the boy was eating chicken nuggets. This is great. And then one day he's having a tantrum. She goes, I think it didn't work. I'm like, what do you mean? Look at him. And he didn't even finish his breath. Now what had happened was, there's the 6 or 7 chicken nuggets with half a plate of sugar, tomato sauce. So that wasn't part of the deal. There was no carbohydrates for breakfast. You look at the breakfast cereals we give our kids. I studied marketing. One of the first things I learned in marketing is Nutrigrain. You remember Nutrigrain, Iron Man food? I used to eat that stuff and think I was an Iron Man. There's more sugar in Nutrigrain than there is in Cocoa Pops. Yeah. But they market Nutrigrain as an Iron Man food. And yeah, if you're an Iron Man, you need that sugar. If you're not, you're going to be, what's the opposite of iron? Like Tin Man. So, protein, first importance, the thymus thumping, the cold shower. Now the thing about the cold shower as well is that it's hard to do. But like you controlling your body, that's what you're going to do. Now that's the perfect morning. When I say the first hour is the rudder for the day, the other things that I think you can do to have a perfect day, and I might have told a couple of you along the way, I set an alarm for myself at 3 o'clock every afternoon. It goes off these days and it doesn't really bother me. I go, okay, 3 o'clock, that's great. But the reason I started setting a 3 o'clock alarm was, at 3 o'clock I'd sit there and I'd think, righto, what's going to wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or keep me awake when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that I can't do anything about because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, that I can do something about at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'd go, righto, well, I haven't spoken to mum and dad for a while. So I'd get up and I'd make a phone call. It's 3 o'clock. Oh, he always calls at 3 o'clock, my dad would say. And it's because, I haven't called you for about 3 days. And if that was the most thing that was bothering me, then that was what I would do. But if it's like, bloody Clarence, every time we have a meeting, he does that. Hey Clarence, can we catch up for a coffee and have a chat? Why do you always do that in a meeting? And that way I don't have to worry about Clarence at 3 o'clock in the morning, So these are the sort of things you can do. I talked to you about the wind down. Again, to know and not to do is really not to know. True weakness in a man is recognizing he has a weakness and not doing anything about correcting it. How many of you have dinner as a family every night? Cool. You'd be surprised. Kids would come over to my place and they go, wow, we never do this. We never have dinner as a family.
It's a shock, I find, but they do.
It's amazing. And yet, you know, like, again, let's go back to the ancestry. Do you think that the parents sat down and ate the wildebeest or whatever it was, or the saber-toothed tiger, and the kids were off in another cave, you know, painting, you know, watching their fire? You know, they weren't. So...
We never did it with this program. It's a strong focus on it, so we
Yeah.
You have started doing it.
every
You notice a difference? More so as they get older.
Mm.
But
And-
I've noticed it with young children, huge, massive change.
When I was, I mean, a lot of the things I learnt from teachers happened from substitute teachers. Like, if the teacher was sick, the substitute teacher would come in, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And I'd listen, and they teach you things. And I remember a teacher, I was in first grade, and she wrote the word nice on the board, and each of us had to think of a better word than nice. And so you got quite creative. And I remember on that day learning like 20 other words for nice. I always say to my kids, how was your day? And you can't use the word good. And that used to happen in the early day. And then I realised as they got older, if I said, you know what happened to me today? And I would tell them, and they'd go, well, you know what happened to me today? And they'd tell me. So that was how the conversation would start. And so I think the idea of, you know, the parents who say, oh, my son gives me one-word answers, because when he did tell you, when he was 7, and you didn't listen because you're worrying about work, he knew you weren't listening, he thought, he's not even listening to me. You know, my daughter wrote in one of my journals, I've been keeping them since 1998, and at the beginning of the year I'd write all my top 10 things I was going to do for the year, and she wrote, do what you say you're going to do. And I said, what is that about? And she said, well, you say we're going to do this and we don't do that, and you say we're going to do that and we don't do that. And I thought, like what? And when she told me, I said, okay, what if we do it tomorrow? Yeah, and we did it tomorrow. And so she has held me accountable ever since. So it's one of those things. I wrote a few things down, so I'll just make sure I've covered everything off, because as we were going, okay, we talked about legacy, and it was something I said to a client who put on so much weight. Actually, it was my brother, and he's the one, I think I told you, I bet him $5,000 that he couldn't lose 30 kilos, and he did, and he's now put on an extra 20, so he's like 50 kilos overweight. And I said to him, you know, he ended up in hospital recently, and he thought they were going to amputate his leg. And I said, you know, I feel so robbed by you, because I paid $5,000 for your life back, because I knew this is where you're going to end up if you kept going how you were going, and you've taken the money, because money was a big thing for him, and look at you. I said, so what is your legacy going to be? I said, what do you want your legacy to be? And he told me, and I said, okay, or it could be the leg I see sitting on the operating table because they had to amputate it. And if you keep going the way, that's what happens. If they're talking about amputations, and you don't know whether you've got diabetes, pancreatic cancer, the thing I would encourage everybody to do, if you haven't already, is apply for life insurance. And whether you go through with it or not, look at the questions that they ask you to see whether you're a safe bet or not. And if you're not doing those things if you do have high blood pressure, get it down. If you've got high cholesterol, get it down. If you smoke, quit. If you drink more than this, stop. All of these sort of things. I was saying to someone earlier on about drinking, and you watch the movies where somebody gets put into an insane asylum and they're not insane, and they make them take the medicine, and the only way they get out is by putting it and pretending they've taken it, and then they escape. And we're all being brought up in this Australia, and it's cool to drink, and then we drink, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes kind of like just a thing that we do. And so I think, Ian, you were talking about putting kombucha into, was it you?
No.
Somebody put kombuchas into a beer cozy and drank their kombucha, so their mates thought they were drinking beer. I drink the cranberry juice in the red wine glass on the Zooms, and the apple juice, so they think I'm drinking red wine. So it's almost like putting the medication under your tongue until they think, oh, he's just like one of us. And then you're strong enough to get out and escape. So you don't have to keep going into the golf and cocaine weekends because you didn't take the numbing medication that keeps you where everybody else is. And I think that's an important thing to consider if you wanted to try that one. I think I've said there are a few, you guys are into Stoicism. Is that part of what you practice?
So probably the fundamentals of it
influence what we're doing, not directly, but it definitely influences.
So one of the I carry a gold coin around with me. It's very important, so I didn't bring it with me on this trip. I didn't bring some things that I would lose that are very important to me. And I've got a place that, on my desk I've got it's a frog door stopper, but it's an iron frog, green frog. So I've got it there, so I look at it every morning, and I have a little gold medallion on that, and I carry another one around in my pocket. Excuse me, it says Memento Mori, which is remember you are mortal. And on the back of it, it says you could leave life right now. And if you think you could die tomorrow, would you be happy with the life that you have lived up to this point? Would your children be proud of the father that they lost? And would they be able to talk about you like they said at your funeral? Would they be able to say, my dad was this, my dad was that, my dad... I mean, I brag about my dad to the point where it's like, shut up, because he was all those things. And I'm very, very proud of the man he is. And I want to be that bloke. But it's not wanting to be, it's doing. In Atomic Habits, has anyone read Atomic Habits?
Yeah.
And so they say there's the wanting, there's the noticing, the wanting, the doing, and the liking. And when you like who you become because of this process, goal setting is not about the goal so much as who you become in the process. And if you get on those scales and they drop a bit, and you get on and they drop a bit, and you look at your MEPs going up, and you see that you can now run, and now you can sprint, and now you can just see, and it is reversible. Well, I said yesterday about going 4Ks off track, you've got to come for, that's 8 extra kilometres you put on your journey, and maybe you've lost 8 years of your life, but you actually can get them back through diet, nutrition. I say you need 30 mils of water for every kilo of body weight. So however much you are, times it by 30, if you're a 100 kilo bloke, that's 3 litres of water you need a day. Water it's the thing that keeps us fluid. People with high blood pressure, it's the viscosity, it keeps the vascularity going. So have your water, and again, drink it all the way throughout the day. I'm kind of hooked on the stuff. Another one is, I've already said that premeditatio malorum, which is think of the worst thing that could possibly happen and do everything in your power to make sure it happens. It doesn't happen, rather. So it depends. If you're a masochist, then make it happen in that regard. You all know carpe diem, and you all know in vino veritas, in wine there is truth. But if you ask yourself the question, how much bullshit have you sat there and listened to while you're drinking red wine or alcohol or whatever? And it's not until you see, again, I'll refer to the Matrix, when you become unplugged from when Morpheus says a system that is so hopelessly inured, they're so plugged into this system that we think is the real world, that people just don't get how happy and how free you can be when you do all this stuff every day. It's hard at the start, but it becomes such a habit and such a momentum that you just do it. And so I have wheatgrass shots every day because they're equivalent to 2 kilograms of the vitamins you'll find in vegetables. It takes me 15 minutes. I have to soak half a glass of wheatgrass seeds, then I put them through the rinser, then the next day I plant them, and then 3 days later they're up, and then I put my wheatgrass machine together, and it takes me 15 minutes. But because I'm doing that the entire time, I'm going, geez, I look after myself, And I've had women say to me, well, you look like you look after yourself. And even in you've seen Casino Royale, when James Bond's tied to the chair and the bloke's whacking him up the cods with the rope, and he goes, you look after yourself, Mr. Bond. And it's a compliment. And looking after yourself is one of the greatest things and the greatest compliments you can give to your creator and to yourselves. So on that note, there's a song that I might have told you blokes about in the past, and it's called Cats in the Cradle. Harry Chapin was the original person that wrote it, and it was my alarm for many, many years. And when I'd ask my daughters, I would play it for my kids so that they would hold me accountable to it. And if my daughters would ask me, could I do something, and I'd be at the laptop, and I'd say, oh yeah, like if someone said tomorrow, and they didn't get around to it. But my youngest daughter would go, okay, no worries. The child arrived just the other day. Okay. So I'd shut the laptop and I'd do it. It's a song that is difficult to listen to, but I've asked Alex if he'd load it up, because Johnny Cash did a version of it that is so boppy that you can't not sing it. And the more you sing it, the more you actually imbue it into yourself. And so this becomes part of you. And when you listen to the words, you don't waste any time on, they say, Goethe said, the things which matter most must never be at the mercy of the things which matter least. We're not raising pigs to send to market. These are our legacy and our happiness right now. So embrace your kids, give them a hug. Another thing of stoicism is if you think you could leave life right now, I hug every person I meet, and my children every night. I put them to bed as though they might die in their sleep. It's a terrible sadness at first that you think that might happen, but there's nothing worse. And you know the people, when I see them at funerals, who are grieving the most, it's because they didn't actually spend the time with that person. They go, shit, I thought I had them forever, you know. But when you treat that person like it's the last time you'll ever see them, you don't say hostile words. They say never let the sun go down in an argument, but we do, you know. So the idea of saying sorry, forgiveness is setting the prisoner free and recognising the prisoner was yourself. Forgiving somebody and saying sorry, that's how you forgive them. The other thing is they say it's not the bite of the snake that kills you, it's chasing after the snake that rushes the venom through your veins. So let it all go. Don't sweat the small stuff. Let the shit go. Be true to yourself. Be kind to yourself, and in turn, be kind to your family and your friends, but especially your children, because that's your real dad. So thank you again for this and for the song.